Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session today on how to leverage remote talent for your business's day-to-day success. My name is Sidra, and I'll be your host for this chat today. I am joined by the wonderful Kathy Hagelin, one of our esteemed customers and the commercial lines service manager at George Peterson Insurance Agency. Kathy has worked in the insurance business for 37 years at various agencies across Sonoma County. She was a commercial lines account manager for 15 years across those various agencies. In addition to this, for the last 2 decades, Kathy has managed the commercial lines service staff at George Peterson Insurance Agency. In her role as manager, Kathy's focus is on making sure that her staff has a great work life balance and on looking for ways to make internal processes more efficient and more streamlined. Kathy has done a great job. She's built her remote team through Edge from the ground up, and done a terrific job in really polishing, honing, and supporting the team in the years that she has been partnered with us. On that note, Kathy, welcome. We're very excited to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here as well.
Amazing. Perfect. Kathy, our goal, and everyone, our goal for this webinar is to really provide you real life examples to help insurance leaders, agency owners, operation teams, just to really understand how to leverage remote talent. And just leveraging remote teams can reduce administrative overload, streamline your daily operations, and just improve client satisfaction for you. This session, we are hoping, will offer you a practical roadmap for delegating repetitive tasks, onboarding and training remote talent, and the most important one, just really building longer term systems that ensure, compliance, quality, and really well measurable, accountable performances. Kathy, before we dive into that, what were the biggest administrative pain points that you faced when you didn't have a remote team?
Um, so some of the things that we were struggling with was getting our policies and endorsements and things like that processed. Another thing that we were struggling with is we wanted to do auditing on our staff. And our staff is worked to the max. So trying to get them to do peer auditing was difficult, and just finding just any individual who could do auditing was difficult. So those were our two, I think the first two things that we looked at.
All right, that's really insightful. And Kathy, how did you discover remote hiring? Did you have any experience with it in the past?
I'm sorry, what was that? How did I what now?
How did you discover remote hiring? Did you have any experience with it in the past? Just having somebody remote.
Um, so I'm really sorry because I'm not getting the question. I apologize.
That's fine. You're fine. So I was just curious, how did you come across the concept of hiring teams remotely?
That. Okay. So it was something, so for the longest time, it was not something that we were really open to. We were worried about, I think like a lot of agencies, we were worried about it taking away jobs from people, locally or within our office. And the more we started researching it, the more we realized, that really isn't the case at all. We've got a lot of repetitive tasks that we're continually training new people on. So it would be nice to have, to be able to outsource those and, just get some more, have them be a little more stable. So we weren't constantly training new people on that.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Kathy, some common bottlenecks that we hear of from other agencies, areas that they really struggle in, can include, missed incoming calls, skipping out on vital data points, and even appointment mismanagement. Did your team run into any of these concerns?
I don't think so. I don't think that we really have an issue with calls being missed. Yeah, I don't think that any of those things overall were an issue for us. Sometimes things not being in the system properly, but that was more because of an individual, not in general. Yeah.
Got it. Perfect. Kathy, so when you made that decision and when you chose to move forward with your remote employees, how did you onboard and train them?
So the first task that we started with was auditing new business that producers write. So what I did was I had looked at for the prior 12 months, how many new business policies we had written. And then I looked at that amount, divided it monthly, and decided that if we were going to do this properly, we probably need 2 people to come on board and do that. So we reached out to Edge. We ended up bringing on 2 people. And then I did, for this process, because it was a new process, I did one-on-one training with them. And so we spent quite a bit of time on Zoom calls like this during the day, and I gave them tasks to help train them, and when I started with it, I really challenged them. I gave them accounts that had a lot of different coverages and a lot of different lines of business. So a lot of different applications and policies that they had to like really look at and work through. So that's how the training started for them. And they just did so well on that. They just picked it up very quickly.
Oh, wonderful. Kathy, how important would you say that regular check-ins are with your team?
I think that it's really important. And over the last year and a half, we've developed what we call coffee talk. So once a week, we get all of our Edge people on a call. It's about, we ask 15 to 20 minutes. We just check in, do you guys, are there any training anything that you need training on? How are things going? Everything's okay. And then we'll ask what we call an icebreaker question. It's just some random question that we pick. And so we just all talk about that. And it's been so nice to be able to do that with the staff and just get to learn more about them and where they live and all of that. And I know that they appreciate that. They look forward to those calls every week as well.
Wow, what an interesting concept. What was the recent question that the team answered?
So we just had our call yesterday, and the
Uh-huh.
question yesterday was, um, if you could be best friends with anyone from an animated movie, cartoon, series, whatever, who would it be? So it was kind of fun. We've got a couple of the girls wanted to be best friends with the Powerpuff Girls. That was what they grew up with. So it was just fun questions like that, just random questions like that.
Wonderful. I'm going to steal that one for our next internal team meeting. I love that.
Yeah, it was fun.
Perfect. And Kathy, have you defined what, during those initial months, were you able to define clear escalation paths for your remote team? Like, hey, if something's going wrong or if you have this concern, this is who you can reach out to in the hierarchy. And these are our contingency plans.
Yes. So I did the initial training with the first 2 people that we brought on. And then I have someone in my we've now got a quality control team. So this was before we actually had that, but I had one person who was coordinating we're running the report, so we knew which policies needed to be checked. And so she was their point person, and she was really good about when they had questions, should you know, does this look right, or should we do that? She was really great at just answering their questions and knowing how to direct them. So,
I mean,
yeah.
amazing. Perfect. And have you implemented any onboarding playbooks for them, especially as you hire more and more people? For example, do you provide them phone scripts, your SOPs, sort of your company playbook?
That's a good question. Um, You know, so yes, I guess I did, because before they started, I had to create the whole procedure for the new business auditing. So that was something that they were provided with before we even rolled it out to the staff, because I wanted to make sure that we had this process down before we rolled it out to the staff. So yes, I did provide them with all of that information, and they used that as well as our training sessions, and they recorded our training sessions. So if they went back and they were doing something on their own, they could go back and listen to what we talked about. And if they still couldn't figure it out, then they would come to me or come to Amy and ask her.
Amazing. And I really like the fact that you had that open door policy for them, that they knew they could come to you or Amy, which I think is really important if you have a remote team, just knowing that there's somebody they can reach out to.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, Kathy, what do you feel really helped set them up for success, especially in the first year?
I do think that the one-on-one training that I did with them, that probably set them up for success more than anything else, right? Because I could see the work that they were doing. We could make corrections immediately on, you know, whatever needed to be corrected. They asked questions, I checked their work. So it was a bit of an investment, initial investment with them. But then once I knew that they got that process, I knew I could just trust them to do whatever they needed to do. So yeah.
Amazing. And Kathy, so a lot of people have questions about how do we start delegating work to somebody who's not physically present with us on site? So, which of the tasks do you feel made the biggest difference once you started delegating that to your remote team?
So, along with that new business auditing, like that was the perfect thing to do. The next thing that I brought some more remote staff on for was our certificate unit. And so I brought that on. I brought two people on for that, and that's worked out really well. Like they're such a part of the team, right? They have they have a group email and they have a group chat, and so they're conversing with each other all the time. So certificates was another one. And the thing about that is that I added those two remote people to the in-house people, so they all work together, right? um we brought another person on to help us transition. We bought a new agency, and all of we weren't able to electronically migrate the policy information, so we had to manually put it in. So we brought someone on, and that she worked on that project for quite some time and got those commercial lines applications up to where they needed to be. And then the final person that we brought on was in our personal lines department. And same thing, so a lot of routine tasks. He started with working cancellations, change requests, things like that. Now they have him helping them with rating, doing mapping for fire areas, you know, however that works. I don't work in personal lines, but the mapping for that.
Yeah.
And so he's just like grown with that unit, and he's just invaluable to them.
Wonderful. Kathy, so what sort of workflows have you created for them to make day to day easier? For example, do you have them work on time specific projects? Is it on a need to work basis? How do you define their workflow?
So for the auditing team, we have a report that gets run on Mondays, and that is where they pull their work from for the week. So the two of them, they'll divide it up. And it's funny because Amy, who creates the report, it's all before she can almost get it done, she sees that they are in there assigning who's going to do which accounts. So they're like on top of it. With our certificate unit, they're just kind of part of that certificate unit. And we have a list that goes out of the accounts that are renewing, that have certificates that need to be renewed. So they're on that list. They get an assigned list that they have to work with. Plus, we have an inbox where all of the daily requests come to. So they have their rotation in that inbox as well. So they get their work in that fashion. And for the personal lines person, I'm honestly not sure because I let him work with the gal in personal lines and they just figure it out.
Of course, no, perfect. And Kathy, are there any additional areas outside of what we've just discussed where the team assists you or that you feel they can assist you in the future?
Yeah, so we're looking at paring back or scaling back on the new business auditing that we're doing. And so the two people that we have doing that, we're going to have them start helping us do processing. So reviewing policies, sending those out. And that is a little bit of what they did in the beginning too. So again, it's going to be a super easy transition for us with that. Along with that, we're starting to look at some other tasks like pulling loss runs, final audits. I think we might even be looking at the cancellation follow-up process. So we're looking at a few other things that we're hoping to we're hoping to be able to add some more people to handle in the next few months.
Nice. So quite a bit of variety there. Perfect. Such an
Yes,
interesting perspective, Kathy.
yes.
Um, what performance indicators do you look at to know that all these tasks that we've discussed, just to know that your remote team is actually delivering value there?
So, with the new business auditing, it was really just like looking over their work in the very beginning and making sure that they were understanding what we were asking. Um, for the processing, it's also processing policies, endorsements, that type of thing. It's also the same thing. As we move them in there, we'll have somebody checking for a while until we feel comfortable with the fact that they're doing exactly what we want. So, and we are making a few changes to the way that we're doing processing. So we're using them to help us test that out. So it's, just a perfect way of like, okay, this is new, so definitely we're checking this and making sure it's working and all of that. Um, and yeah, so that is how we kind of do auditing on the back end with them.
Amazing. And Kathy, do you also rely on any qualitative measures? For example, word of mouth feedback from other clients or their colleagues at the agency?
Um, So right now for personal lines, it's really the colleagues at the agency. So it's kind of like the more that our person in personal lines handles, um, the more we're willing to give him. And he's just willing to take on anything. So it's just been really nice. And we originally brought him on to fill in for a person who was going on maternity leave. And then because he did such an amazing job, I think that that was a good fit, right? And then uh as far as the rest of I think it's just more like because we check the work, like, yeah, we're feeling comfortable with what they're doing.
Amazing. Another area of struggle, Kathy, that some businesses face with remote teams is how can I build a trust-based relationship with my remote staff? So, what's your perspective on this?
Um, That's a good question. Um, so the people who are doing the new business auditing, there was definitely a lack of trust at the beginning of that from the producers, but it had nothing to do with the Edge staff. It had everything to do with the producers being held accountable, and they didn't like that. So, you know, uh, that we've long since gotten over that hurdle. And I think that the producers have realized that these people know what they're looking at, and it's rare. Occasionally, there's something that they look at that maybe needs to be done differently. So we talk to them about it, we make a little tweak, and it all goes fine. With the certificate unit, um, we started with like a Zoom call to introduce them, to introduce the two people that we brought on to the rest of the staff. And then they just like kind of fit right in. So it just, and none of everyone in our agency knows that we have remote people, and no one seems to have any issues with that at all. They're just another person, another part of the team.
Love that. Perfect. Um, and Kathy, what do you do to ensure that your team has work-life balance? How do you facilitate that?
So are you talking about for my Edge staff, for my in-house staff, both?
We can talk about both.
Okay, so I'll start with the Edge staff first. So we chose to pick to have people from Peru because their time was closer to ours, because it's, you know, they're about half of the year they're 3 hours ahead of us, and the other half of the year they're 2 hours ahead of us. So I've made sure that they have jobs or work that they can do that allows them to, they can start early and get off later. So they start at, I think, 8 o'clock in the morning, and they're done by 5 o'clock their time. So they still have a normal day, and, you know, they're not getting off at 8 o'clock at night and, you know, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock in the morning. Um, and so that was something that was important to me. And I think that's another reason that we are successful with this staff too, because they feel that too. And we've talked about that in some of our coffee talks, you know, about how they like the remote work because now they don't have to commute 2 or 3 hours a day. And, you know, it's just they can be home for dinner. And so and then in-house is kind of the same thing. So we are pretty flexible with like if someone has to take a doctor's appointment, they can come in early, they can work later. We don't make them use up all of their sick time for things like that. You know, we try to be flexible with that. People don't abuse it. It's just, yeah, yeah. And then just monitoring the amount of work that people have too. You know, like I don't want people to feel that they have to work a bunch of overtime all the time. If they're having to work overtime, then let's look at what that workload is and why that's happening and how can we fix that.
Amazing, Kathy. And so what do you feel looking at all of this, that what has been your biggest win in having a remote team?
Oh, goodness. My biggest win is I'm getting more work done, right? And I'm getting new business auditing done. So just auditing in general, that was so necessary for us. Like that piece has been taken care of. So after COVID, it was very hard for us to find employees. And so in the prior to COVID, we used to have referrals. Like we rarely ever had to advertise because we had a lot of people working for us, and they always had someone who they were like, you need to bring this person on. COVID came, and we didn't have any referrals. We started advertising, and that was even so difficult to like try to find anybody who wanted to work at that time. And then bringing Edge on was just like easy, so easy. You know, you guys, whenever we call, here you go. Here's a list of people. We meet with them, we pick them, and just go run with it. So much easier.
Great. And Kathy, in retrospect, if there's one thing that you could have done differently, maybe something that you then eventually did change with later hires, what would that be?
Something I would change. Um, that's a hard question. And the reason I say that is because I feel like everything that I've done with Edge has just flowed so easily, right? We've had a couple of times where some of the Edge people, so one of the things with Peru is they get, I think, like 20 days of vacation a year or 30 days. They get a lot of vacation a year, right? And so some of them want to take it all at one time. And Edge has been really good about providing us with someone who will fill in. So we get that person ahead of time, they fill in. I just, I honestly don't know that I can say that there's anything that I would have done differently because it's all just been very smooth, very easy.
Amazing. And we see the results of that in the happiness that your team has. We hear it, we see it. So absolutely great job done there. Kathy, in addition to that, have you heard something from the rest of your team that they feel like having added remote people, it has really helped them in that particular area?
I don't know that they've actually said that directly, but I think the fact that they embrace those people as part of their team speaks volumes. Like they don't have to say it because they treat those people as if they're here, right? So clearly they know that they're helping and they're so happy to have them here.
Perfect. And Kathy, considering the fact that you have been with us over a couple of years at this point, what do you feel has been your biggest takeaway from the journey you've had working with remote people so far?
I think my biggest takeaway is the fact that it wasn't as big of an issue as I thought it was going to be, right? Like bringing people that are remote that, you know, it's I think that that's the biggest takeaway is it's actually pretty easy. And having Zoom and Teams and email and Teams chat, and there's so many ways to keep in contact with them that it's like they're here because the office that I'm in, it's a 2-story building and we have approximately 80 people who work here. And so everybody downstairs and upstairs will say at times, like, it feels like we're in 2 different buildings because there's times we never see people. So it's not any different than working with someone remotely. It's, you know, it's, yeah.
Wow, that's a nice shift in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. And Kathy, one last question for you before we open the floor to questions. What's your biggest piece of advice to someone who would be hiring remotely for the first time?
I think my biggest piece of advice is you want to make sure that you've got your the procedure that you want the remote people to follow. You want to make sure that you have that set very well set, written down, whatever, and then understand that you're going to have to spend a little bit of time doing some training, right? You are going to have to invest a little bit of time. But the nice thing about bringing people on from Edge is that they already had training in our management system. So it wasn't like they were starting from scratch there. They've had training as far as coverage training. What is general liability? What is auto? Like those types of things. Um, they've all been really quick learners. So, but just again, just kind of being patient with that process. It's not like you can bring somebody on today and by the end of next week, they're just going to be rolling with it. You do have to invest a little bit of time with that. But then once you do, forget it. They're gone. They're good. They're good to go.
Amazing. Thank you, Kathy, for your valuable insight. We are now moving on to questions from our participants today. I'm sure they're going to have a few for you. So I'll quickly just wait and then we'll get to answering those.
Okay.
Feel free to drop your questions either in the chat box or you can send those to me directly as well through the chat box. Both options work. All right, Kathy, so we have a question from Christina. She's asking, do your Edge employees have contact with your clients or just internally?
So well, yes, the people who work in certificates do have contact with our insureds. And it's really through email. They don't like physically have phones where they talk to them. But yeah, they do, because they'll email the certificates to them, they'll ask them questions, they interact with them just like everyone else does.
Awesome. All right, I have this direct question here, Kathy, for you. So they're asking, what are the first signs that the team is overwhelmed enough to warrant remote support?
Oh. I think it's going to be different for every agency, but for me, like with my certificate unit, when I have my people working overtime on a regular basis, and the other thing with our certificate unit is we have 11 offices. So in the beginning, we weren't doing certificates for all of the offices, but now we're doing them for all the offices. So as we added more offices, I realized there's no way that the team I have right now can handle that extra load. So then I had to add more to them, or add more staff.
Perfect. I hope that answers your question. I have another one here for you, Kathy. How long does it typically take to fully onboard a remote assistant for insurance operations?
So for the new business auditing, I want to say, the new business auditing was it's a very labor intensive process, right? Like there are a lot of things that team is looking at. So I would say it was probably about a month maybe to fully onboard them. That wasn't full time every day for a month, right? So for the first couple of weeks, we did a lot of training. I kind of dedicated a lot of time, but then it was more just being available to answer questions and looking at their work. For the certificate unit, I'm going to say it probably took, don't know, maybe a month, but we have them doing renewals plus looking at new requests and understanding what's being asked for a new request. And again, it's not full time for a whole month, it's doing some training with them initially and then letting them try it, making sure they're doing it, and then slowly just letting them move on to the next thing.
Awesome. All right, we have another question here for you. So how do you handle a day-to-day schedule? Like, do they have a set time for breaks and lunch, or is it flexible?
So the staff that I have now, like they were on it. They sent me like, this is when we'll take our breaks. This is when we have to take lunch. And I think it has to do too with where they work, like they have certain guidelines that they have to follow. Um, but they're also like, I'm flexible with them if they need to be flexible as well, right? So I will work with them, but they're usually pretty good about having set schedules.
Nice. Perfect. We'll wait a couple more minutes. Does anyone have an additional question? Perfect. We have another question for you, Kathy. So, have you ever had compliance issues with remote staff, and how were they resolved?
So, compliance issues, I'm assuming that question is meaning like, were they not doing the job the way we wanted them to do that? Would that make, yeah? So if that's the case, yes, we did. We had one person that came in and was filling in for someone who was on vacation. And we were thinking, okay, we want to like try to add some staff to another department. So we kept this person on for a while. We could see after a while that they just were not quite getting it. There were things that were being missed. So we reached out to Sidra and talked to her about that. And she connected the person with the training staff at Edge, had this person go through some more training. We brought the person, we continue to work with them. It was good for a short period of time and then just went back to like a lot of things just not being missed. So then we reached out to Sidra and just let her know like this isn't working, and she took care of the rest for us. So it was actually a pretty easy process when you figure out that they're not complying with what you need.
Awesome. And we have another question here for you, Kathy. So, how do you handle connectivity issues?
So our IT department works closely with the remote staff as well as the IT department at Edge. So they all kind of work together to make sure that they're able to connect. And sometimes most of the time it's something on our end that's the problem. So we get it figured out and get them back working as soon as we can.
Awesome. I like that approach. Perfect. We'll give our participants a couple more minutes and we'll field another question. Then we're good to move ahead. All right, Kathy, here's another question for you. So, what mistakes should I avoid when onboarding someone remote for the first time?
What mistakes to avoid? I think probably the main thing, which I had mentioned before, is understanding that it does take a little bit of time and not just expecting the people that you bring on board to start and be ready to go right out the gate. So there is some training. So try to make sure when you're looking at bringing someone on that you have set time aside to be able to do the training with that person.
Awesome. Perfect. All right. Wonderful, Kathy. Thank you for having taken out the time to share your journey with us. Any final thoughts to add here?
Just that if people are thinking about doing it, it really is a great help to the workflow, the everyday workflow for your staff. It really is a great help, and it's, for me, definitely worth the investment, time-wise and money-wise.
Amazing. And everyone, we hope that you walk away with a clear, actionable framework just to make remote support a reliable part of your operations. And Kathy and our participants today, thank you so much for your time. And it was such a pleasure to have all of you here with us. Take care, everyone.
Welcome. Thank you.